People of YouTube, greetings. This is Bruce. In this video I'm going to talk about my recommendations for a small form factor build in preparation for the RTX 30 series graphic cards from NVIDIA. So I'm obsessed with small form factor builds. The reason why, because I'm largely a console gamer. So I usually just play the console games on a big screen. I'm talking about 160 inches projector screen that I have. And so this PC will have to sit in between my consoles in the living room, and it can't be too big, can't be too PC-ish. And this one, actually I regret the color a bit, but it's still pretty nice. I probably should have got the black one, because all my other consoles are black. Anyway, this little case is small enough to fit in with all the other gadgets I have, but big enough to house even the flagship 3080 graphic card. I will put the details of this build in the description down below. I'll also put a few variations for different budgets. Now, as the title suggests, it's a budget build, but it's not your average cheap PC per se. By budget build, what I mean is actually comparing to the previous generation 2080 Ti, the previous generation. So with this build, it'll range between $1,500 to $2,500, depending on what CPU and what graphic card you choose. Without further ado, let's get into the build. So first, let's look at the case. I've set my eyes on this case for a long time. I'm actually currently using a Core V1 from Thermaltake. It's a small case, but it still takes a fair amount of space on the desk. It's short, but it's wide. And it doesn't even hold any graphic card more than 10.2 inches. Compared to this one is narrower, shorter, more compact. It is actually about 3 liters less than the other case, but surprisingly, it holds graphic cards up to 12.5 inches, which is actually larger than the 2080 Ti on the market or the upcoming 3080. Now there's a hidden feature in there as well. So if you use PC part picker, you won't be able to pick any motherboard other than the RTX ones. And you know the RTX ones are pretty expensive. This one actually holds a MATX motherboard up to 24.4 centimeters wide and 22.6 centimeters deep. So let's have a look. What I have here is actually a micro RTX motherboard. So it's exactly 24.4 centimeters long and about 21.6 centimeters wide. You can actually go wider, it seems. But one thing though, if you do plan to use a large motherboard like this, you will need to remove a clip from the bottom of the case. Otherwise you wouldn't have enough clearance down there. So you'll see that the edge of the motherboard is almost touching the case here. So what you want to do is you remove that little clip and then you insert the motherboard in. Now don't worry about the bottom of the case, it won't fall. So as you can see here, you can actually put a screw on it and it's going to be as secure as it can be. I was joking about the weight as well, it's actually not that heavy. So it's quite portable as well. Let's talk about the CPU and the cooler. So again, this is a fairly small case, but you can actually have a pretty big cooler in there. As you can see, I have a Gammax 400 cooler in there. It's about 145 centimeters tall, 145 millimeters tall. That's pretty much the maximum height you can get. What you can do, you can also remove this little panel here, but I would suggest keep it in just to make it more rigid. And if you put the case on, it's almost touching the side of the case already, but that's okay. For the CPU, I'm using a Core i7-10700 here, so that's the latest and the greatest from Intel, because I'm planning to put in a RTX 3080 graphic card. Another good option is a very cheap entry-level i5-10400. Now that CPU is good enough for gaming, but because I'm also planning to use this one for video editing, so I went for the slightly higher configuration. But you really don't want to have anything lower than a 10400 if you plan to use any of the 30 series graphic card on this. Because if you do, you'll have hiccups in the games. I was using a Core i3-100 together with my GTX 1065 Super, and the game just have hiccups. So the maximum FPS is okay, but when it comes to the lowest FPS, it can get pretty low and render the game unplayable. That's why you don't want to save on the CPU here. As you can see, I have two 16 gig RAM sticks in this machine because, as I mentioned before, I'm planning to use it as a video editing machine as well. But if you just want to do your game, you just need two 8 gig sticks. That would be more than enough. Now, if you're using the ATX motherboard as I do here, you will need to mount your PSU on the back of your front panel. Because you can see here, the ATX motherboard will actually block it. If you're using an ITX motherboard, you can fix your PSU on the side panel here. But I would suggest mount your PSU on the back of the front panel. Why? Because you will have much larger clearance for your GPU to sit. So if you put it around there, it's going to block half of the GPU in there already. And I strongly suggest you get a modular PSU. Why? As you can see here, this case is very small. It can indeed house up to 330mm long graphic card, but the graphic card is going to span all over from the start to the end of the case. And if you use a conventional PSU, the cables will get in the way, especially with the 3080. It has an up-facing fan, and the cables will actually jam the fan down there. With a modular PSU, you can see here, you can tuck the cables away. And you don't need to have all that many cable in here either. You'll have enough room for the GPU to breathe. There you have it. Now I'm just waiting for my 3080 to arrive. Actually, I haven't pre-ordered yet. Guess what? You cannot pre-order. But if you do want to get your paws on the brand spanking new 3080 or 3070 or 3090, head to the link in the description down below. If you want to get the Founders Edition 30 series, head to MWave and sign up for the raffle tickets. Yeah, it's crazy, alright? They actually treat this like a freaking lottery. Please be considerate and do not enter more than once. I know many of you have more than one email address. Well, all the best. May the odds be ever in your favor. That's it, folks. I'm Bruce. Till next time.